I could have been killed. I think I escaped death many times, 4 times or 3 times, the ones I remember. Escaping death, seeing death in that I'm gonna be killed today.
Brutal, cold, a lot of rats running around, but they need a lot of help out here. They need to have first-hand to apartments, first-hand to health facilities, and legislators and elected officials need to come out here and lay down to sleep and see how they feel.
Do you think hunger is the scariest part of living on the streets? In reality, what wears people down faster is instability. No stove to cook on, no refrigerator to keep food safe, no clean place to store a meal for tomorrow. That's why survival meals often aren't pretty, but they're compact, shelf-stable, energy-dense, easy to carry, and most importantly, they help the body hold on through the next few hours of bitter cold. In today's video on The Homeless Fact, we'll walk through 15 low-cost options that many unhoused people are forced to rely on, from peanut butter, day-old bread, instant noodles, and canned beans, to ways of making use of hot water and meal distribution schedule. The goal is not to promote this. It's to understand why people end up choosing it and what the system has failed to provide. If you want stories and facts like these to keep being told with dignity and respect, please hit like, subscribe to The Homeless Fact, and leave a comment. Which survival meal surprised you the most? And what do you think the community could do that's more practical and effective? When a meal becomes a survival strategy. On the streets, food isn't chosen by taste, but by 3 cold criteria. No cooking required, no refrigeration needed, and enough calories to last for hours. That's why peanut butter becomes a familiar survival currency. Cheap, compact, calorie-dense, and edible straight from a spoon, it doesn't create much waste, and it isn't dependent on the weather. And when everything you own has to fit in a backpack dragged through drizzle, slush, and mud, a tight lid can matter just as much as nutritional value. From that logic, the story quickly moves to another food source that's even more common. In many cities, yesterday's bread gets discarded on a fixed schedule, and unhoused people memorize that schedule the way you'd memorize a bus route. A single loaf can provide close to a full day's worth of energy, especially when paired with a bit of cheese, canned fish, or supplies from a food bank. Quiet. Bread routes form. Which places toss it at closing time, which ones leave a clean bag by the back door, who sees it and silently looks the other way. But bread alone is still not enough, and the need for something warm leads us into the next part. When quiet kindness is what keeps people going. Behind free condiment stations and public hot water corners lies a harsh truth. Sometimes people have to patch together a meal using things that were never meant to become a main dish. Mixing a few sauce packets with hot water into something like soup is not a clever hack. It's a sign of having no real choices, when the body needs energy, but the support system hasn't reached you in time. And it's in those moments that the value of community solutions becomes unmistakable. A hot meal distribution point, a food bank that provides appropriate dry goods, a church or support center that opens on time. These can replace makeshift meals with something minimal but real: safe food, stability, and respect for human dignity. What matters is this: this story does not promote any temporary eating workaround. It asks why a city still allows people to fend for themselves this way, instead of connecting them to sustainable, reliable help. If you've witnessed or know of any place near you providing meals, clean water, or access to services, leave a comment so the community can find it. And if you want the homeless fact to keep telling stories with a solutions-first lens, please hit like and subscribe so kindness doesn't end as a feeling but becomes action. The meal map, when survival becomes a memorized schedule. On the streets, hunger is not just a feeling, it's a time and distance problem. People live by a meal map in their heads. Stop by an early food distribution point in the morning, find hot water at midday, time it right for when a church opens its doors at night. No GPS needed, they remember through routine. Which day a bakery clears out day-old goods, what time a convenience store marks down hot food, and when they can ask for a cup of water without being questioned. And every step has a purpose, because one wrong turn can cost an entire meal. From there, the story moves into the quiet routes that most people never notice. But chasing the schedule comes with a price. Some walk 5 to 10 kilometers a day just to piece together a few scattered portions. Their bodies are drained, yet they still have to look normal. Jacket pulled straight, pace kept steady, eyes careful not to draw attention. A free meal sometimes isn't lacking food, it's lacking safety, lacking the feeling that you're truly welcome. And once they've grown used to having to ask the right way, many choose silence instead of explaining. From here, we move into the next part. Low-cost foods don't just fill an empty stomach, they shape dignity and risk day after day. A spoonful of energy, when calories become currency on the streets. On the sidewalk, people don't choose food by taste, they choose by efficiency. A cheap jar of peanut butter can carry a full day's worth of energy. No stove, no refrigerator, just twist the lid and eat. What seems ordinary becomes an asset because it's sealed, clean, resistant to drizzle and dust, and can be hidden in a backpack like an emergency reserve. Day-old bread collected at the right hour from a bakery, instant noodles mixed with hot water from a gas station, or a pull-tab can of beans. These are the minimalist formulas of survival, but enough to keep a body upright for a few more hours. And once you understand the rules of an empty stomach, you start to see just how relentlessly street life operates. But there is always a cost attached. Eating fast, eating cold, eating high-salt food with little vegetables. The body pays through small accidents, stomach pain, blood sugar crashes, exhaustion from missing nutrients. Some rely on free packets of sauce, ketchup, or mayonnaise as a mock meal to bridge the gaps, because sometimes what they lack isn't only food, but also the sense of safety when stepping into a place lit by warmth and light. And from here, the story has to move forward. Water, heat, and a place to sit, things that can be even harder to find than a meal. The meal map, when kindness also needs a schedule. On the streets, hunger doesn't arrive on the clock, but meals do. People memorize where breakfast is served, where dinner is offered, and where takeout is allowed, like a hidden map of the city. Morning at a shelter breakfast line, midday dependent on an emergency food bag, night spent queuing at a community kitchen. The cycle isn't glamorous, but it carries them through one more night. Some walk miles just to reach the final serving because missing today means going hungry until tomorrow. And in the hush of those lines, sometimes a single question, "Ree, you okay?" is enough to warm an entire day. But when food depends on luck and timing, the next question becomes even more painful. If that schedule disappears tomorrow, what will they have left to lean on? Survival tactics. When a meal is more than just something to eat. On the streets, people don't cook in the familiar sense. They calculate every small advantage so they don't collapse halfway through the day. A jar of peanut butter or a pouch of tuna isn't chosen only because it's cheap. But after all, it's compact, sealed, doesn't require a stove, won't spoil easily, and can be eaten immediately in the rain or while constantly on the move. They prioritize food that's open and use, pull-tab cans, easy-tear packets, anything that doesn't require utensils or complicated tools, because losing a can opener can mean losing an entire meal. Some ask for a cup of hot water at a convenience store to soften instant noodles. Others take advantage of the final hour at a market or bakery to collect what's still good, not as a trick, but as a way to reduce waste and extend survival. And once you understand these small tactics, you arrive at a bigger question. Why does a modern city force people to live by tactics at all? Running the meal schedule, when kindness has opening hours. For many unhoused people, survival isn't only about finding cheap food, it's about memorizing schedules like a survival map. Breakfast at a shelter, dinner at a community kitchen, or food distributions run by volunteer groups become time markers that keep the body from giving out. And what's notable is this: sometimes you don't need a bed to eat. Many places prioritize hunger over paperwork, lowering barriers for people already exhausted from navigating bureaucracy all day. But this system is fragile. Open today, closed tomorrow because of funding shortages, staffing gaps, or overload. When a meal depends on being in the right place at the right time, hungry people are forced to travel farther, wait longer in line, and accept real risk just to trade it for a hot tray of food. And from here, the story is no longer what can fill the stomach, but who is society placing the burden of survival on? It's not that they eat strangely. It's that they've lost the right to live normally. When you look at low-cost meals, what stands out isn't what they're eating, but what has been lost. A kitchen, a refrigerator, an address to receive help, and even the basic sense of safety to eat without staying on guard. When a jar of peanut butter or a packet of noodles becomes survival currency, it's because it's compact, durable, and requires no cooking, suited to a life that's constantly being pushed and pulled. And from here, the story shifts from hunger to the right to the minimum conditions of living. From a news perspective, this is a chain of consequences: rising living costs, fragmented assistance, overloaded services, and vulnerable people forced to learn a meal schedule the way others learn a transit timetable. Each meal is not only about calories, but also a psychological anchor. Today, somewhere is still open. Today, someone still sees you as human. That feeling is what carries them through one more day. And if we still feel a tightening in our chest hearing this, it means indifference hasn't frozen over yet. Up next, the most important thing is this: turning compassion into the right kind of action, from how we give to how we demand lasting solutions. A meal can't save a life, but it can save a night. As the story closes, what lingers isn't the list of cheap foods, but the survival math behind it. An unhoused person has to calculate every calorie, every step, every time window as if living in a city with its own rules, where getting to eat can matter as much as getting to sleep. And in that world, a packet of hot noodles or a free banana doesn't just fill a stomach, it can pull a body back from the edge of exhaustion. But if we stop at feeding people, we're only addressing what's visible. What's underneath is the lack of safe places to cook, the lack of consistent meal distribution points, the lack of health support, the lack of a pathway back into work, and the lack of a system fast enough to catch people before they hit the street. That's why a meal must come with information. Where dinner is served, where clean water is available, and where real help can be reached. If you want the homeless fact to keep shedding light on what few people say out loud, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. In your view, what is the single most essential thing someone needs to return to a normal life? And from here, we keep going, not just telling the story, but looking for a way out. When a bite of food becomes a city's mirror. A list of cheap meals may sound like life hacks, but in truth, it's a news bulletin about a gap in stable housing, of health care, and of ordinary days where the next meal isn't a fear. When people choose food because it doesn't require a kitchen, it means they're living in a place where a kitchen does not exist. When people rely on drinking water and a cup of coffee just to hold on, it means the body has been running in emergency mode for far too long. Still, one thing keeps this story from collapsing into despair. Quiet kindness. A staff member saving the last portion. A volunteer calling someone by their real name. Someone splitting the little they have in half. If you want stories like this to keep being told, hit like, subscribe to The Homeless Fact, and leave a comment. What do you think a city's minimum standard for a decent meal should be? And may someone out there tonight find a hot meal and a door that opens. Amen.